Cheap imports flood India, blessing for buyers or a threat to Make in India. Imagine cargo ships filled with goods arriving at India's borders one after another, cheap electronics, clothes, machines, agricultural products, and all sorts of items priced so low that the common consumer feels delighted, but chaos breaks out in the country's factories. This scene is not a fictional movie but a sign of an impending economic crisis knocking at India's door due to the world's biggest tariff war. In such a situation, where on one hand consumers see benefits, on the other hand, anxiety is rising among the country's manufacturers. When foreign goods start entering the country at cheap prices, the biggest impact falls on the domestic production system. It is a situation where a wrong policy or a delayed response can weaken the foundation of the future economy. Today, we will discuss this issue in depth. But before that, if you are new to our channel, please don't forget to subscribe so you get updates for every new video first. So let's begin today's discussion without any delay. Donald Trump's tariff policy has shaken the very foundations of global trade. The ongoing trade war between the US and China hasn't just affected these two nations, it has pulled the entire world into its vortex. While the US has imposed a staggering 245% tariff on Chinese goods, China has retaliated with a 125% tax. With the American market becoming too expensive for them, countries like China, Vietnam, and Indonesia are now searching for new destinations for their products, and India has emerged as one of the most suitable options. These circumstances are like a cyclone, impacting every country in its path. And now, that cyclone has turned toward India. In such a scenario, India must remain vigilant, because this opportunity, while promising, could also turn dangerously risky. The Indian government fears that these countries may start dumping their goods into India. In other words, companies could begin selling their products in India at such low prices that domestic manufacturers might not be able to survive. According to a report by the Indian Express, a senior government official stated that exporters from these countries are now facing trade losses in the US and are eyeing India's massive market instead. This is not merely a suspicion, but a strong conclusion based on global trade patterns and shifting export directions. The danger of such dumping could act like slow poison for India's economy. When markets are flooded with cheap goods, consumers naturally shift toward those options, leading to the gradual shutdown of local manufacturing. This means that the Indian market could soon be flooded with imported goods. The most noticeable impact is expected in sectors like electronics, machinery, textiles, and agricultural products. US agricultural commodities such as soybeans and corn may enter India in large quantities, as high tariffs in China have left American companies seeking new markets. If this happens, India will not only need to capitalize on trade opportunities but also take several serious policy decisions. Indian farmers are already in a fragile situation, and the influx of cheap foreign agricultural goods could push them further to the margins. This looming crisis cannot be taken lightly. Recognizing this threat, the Indian government has become vigilant. The Ministry of Commerce has launched a global tariff and trade help desk to assist traders, producers, and other stakeholders in navigating this sudden global shift. According to the ministry, challenges such as rising tariffs, increasing imports, and declining exports can be managed through this help desk. It will not only serve as an information platform but also act as a data source for policymakers. Through this, the government will be able to track which sectors are seeing the most imports, from which countries, and to what extent they are impacting the domestic market. While this step is significant, it will only be effective if it is accompanied by a strong monitoring mechanism. Commerce Secretary Sunil Bartwal recently chaired a meeting where he stated that global trade conditions have become unstable following the recent tariff announcements. He said that the government is closely monitoring the countries and products from which imports are rising rapidly. Based on this, policy decisions will be made. This statement makes it clear that the government understands the seriousness of the issue, but the challenge lies in how effectively these policies can be implemented on the ground. Making strategies on paper and achieving real outcomes are two very different things. To bridge this gap, it's essential that state-level departments are also activated so that a unified approach can be developed across the country. The impact of this will be clearly visible on India's domestic companies. A rise in imports from China, in particular, could directly affect India's small and medium enterprises, which are already burdened with intense competition. These companies are not only struggling to survive in the market, but also facing the challenge of retaining their workforce. In such a situation, dumping will further intensify the pressure on domestic industries. When foreign goods are sold in the market at half the price, consumers are naturally attracted to them. But that same cheap product gradually destroys the country's manufacturing capacity. And if production shuts down, what happens to dreams of employment, innovation, and self-reliance? The electronics sector, textiles, machinery, and other manufacturing industries could be the most affected by this potential crisis. If a large economy like China starts dumping its products cheaply in India, Indian manufacturers won't be able to compete in terms of cost. This could lead to reduced production, factory closures, and an unemployment crisis. That's why this is not just a trade issue, it could escalate into a social and political crisis. For a country like India, where millions work in the unorganized sector, such shocks could have wide-ranging consequences. This, therefore, is not merely a matter of trade policy but a battle to protect the backbone of the country's economy. The Indian government now faces a dual challenge. On one hand, it must stay connected with global trade to ensure market access for Indian exporters, and on the other, it must protect its domestic manufacturing sector. In such a situation, the government may move towards imposing anti-dumping duties. The aim of such measures is to prevent domestic industries from being harmed by cheap foreign goods and to maintain balance in the market. But this is no easy task. It requires collecting data, conducting thorough analysis, and preparing diplomatically. This isn't merely about imposing a tax. It's about protecting national interests while managing global relations. But this task is not easy. Imposing anti-dumping duties against any country is a significant step, both diplomatically and commercially. The affected country may become upset, trade agreements may be impacted, and there's always the risk of retaliatory action against India. Additionally, if a country challenges this decision at the World Trade Organization, WTO, India must be able to present its case strongly. That's why any such decision must be based on concrete data and facts and be legally sound so that it can stand up to international scrutiny. Still, India has no option but to protect its domestic companies, especially at a time when initiatives like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat are being actively pursued. If cheap foreign goods flood the market, Indian companies will never be able to achieve growth. This isn't just about economic growth, it's about economic independence. If India does not strengthen its domestic industries, future generations will be dependent solely on imported goods, and the country's production capacity will gradually erode. To fully understand this entire situation, it is essential to go to the roots of the global tariff war. Trump's policy aimed to curb China's cheap export strategy. But this policy hasn't just affected China, it has impacted the entire global supply chain. Now, companies are looking for new locations with cheaper labor and production costs, and India is emerging as a favorable destination. However, this will only be possible if India maintains policy stability, improves its logistics infrastructure, and creates a competitive business environment. In other words, this is both a crisis and an opportunity for India. The crisis lies in the threat that dumping poses to domestic industries. The opportunity lies in the fact that, if the government makes the right policy decisions at the right time, India can become a global manufacturing hub. This will require improved logistics, tax reforms, flexibility in labor laws, and most importantly, a stable trade policy. If the government implements all these elements in time, this tariff war could mark the beginning of a new era for India. Now the question is, will the Indian government steer this opportunity in the right direction? Will it take timely action against dumping? Will Indian companies receive enough support to compete globally? And most importantly, can India turn this economic battle into a golden opportunity? The answers to these questions will unfold in the coming weeks and months. But one thing is certain, this tariff war has now arrived at India's doorstep, and every step taken will have a direct impact on the country's trade, employment, and economic policies.
If our video has taught you something new, do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources: news from various news agencies, opinion polls, and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.